Hello and welcome back to Mr. George's Museum of Time. I am Diana Bell and I'm going to tell you all about clock suspensions. Something we always tell our customers when they come in and take repairs out is you must take your pendulum off your clock when you carry it. I'll tell you why. Now the reason why we always say to take the pendulums off, which is here, you can see it swing backwards and forwards when you carry it, because at the top of the pendulum rod is a little suspension spring which is like this. Now you can see there's two very thin pieces of wire in between the two ends. You can see it's very fragile. So that goes in the top of here, you can see at the top. Now if that breaks, of course, and if you move this clock around too much with that on and go like that, that would snap. So it's so important every time you move a pendulum clock, you take the pendulum off. Otherwise this will snap. This is a very common fault in clock making. Now we will look at some other suspension springs now. Now you can see this one is completely different. That's the suspension part, which is the little spring, but it's actually attached to the pendulum rod. Pendulum goes on the bottom here. So if that broke, you'd have to drill this out to make a complete new one. Okay? Now this one here is also a suspension that you would have to make up, and it actually fits in to a grandfather clock pendulum. I will show you. Now as I said, this is a piece that's come off like a grandfather clock pendulum. Now this pendulum here, the suspension is broken off like this one has, and it actually has to fit into the end. There's a little slot there and that would slide down inside, and then that would hook on to the clock. Now it is a very long and heavy pendulum, and this is from a grandfather clock we've been donated. It needs a lot of work. See, the pendulum rod is very twisted as well, so it will take quite a lot of work to restore the pendulum, never mind the clock. So the piece of suspension that's broken into there has to be drilled out, and then something like this, because this isn't complete, this part, will have to be slotted in and welded in. So a lot of work. Now this suspension spring is also attached to the pendulum. See how fine it is and how big the pendulum is. It is very heavy, and it's off a Fuse clock. It's actually off this old clock movement, which is a bit worn out now. But imagine you didn't take this pendulum off and try to carry that without taking the pendulum off. This spring would definitely break. So again, you must take your pendulums off before you carry them. Now we'll move on to something else that has a very, very fine suspension spring. Now as you can see, this suspension spring here is very, very fine, and that operates little balls at the bottom that go round and round that makes the clock work. And this is from a 400-day clock, otherwise known as our anniversary clock. And these are very, very hard to set up and to repair. When my father was alive, he hated doing this. A lot of people had them, and what would happen when they stopped, or maybe grandparents had them and the grandchildren would come along, they would push that very fast and all this would twist up and also break. So I can show you one that is out of the clock movement. You see how fine that is. Well, those break very, very easily. But with these ones, they have locks underneath to lock the balls going around, so you carry them and you lock them. Instead of taking the pendulum off, which is the balls, you actually lock them, which usually operates, there's usually a lever or a screw underneath. so this won't fly around when you carry them. So the lesson for today is always take the pendulums off when you carry them. Hope you found that very interesting, and please tune in again to our next video. This is Dinah Bell saying goodbye from the Museum of Time.